Well, it's been about a month since we put an episode up, and I don't want to give anybody the impression that we've been slacking, because that hasn't been the case. It's just we may be in the middle of our most research-intensive episode yet, and it's going to be a much longer one than normal if things continue to go the way they are. In the meantime, our friend Dan has sent us another story to record, and it's something of an ambitious project. He says that this is going to be the first part in a 5-part mini-series of sorts, mostly because if we were to cover the whole thing in one episode, we'd be here for more than an hour, and I don't think most people are prepared to sit here and listen to me talk for that long. This story has everything that we love, though. It has the history of the region, the folklore of the state, and stories that you don't hear all that much about. So we begin with the setup to all of that, and this is the story of the Manchester Bridge. One of the defining traits in the city of Pittsburgh is, of course, all the rivers. There's the confluence of the Allegheny and the Monongahela, which then form the Ohio at the point of Pittsburgh, the very downtown area. And these rivers have facilitated the growth of the region, dating all the way back to the foundation of the city as a French fort, Duquesne. Crossing those rivers, then, has become one of the most important areas of concern for the city and the region, leading to some 446 bridges being constructed across the region at this point, and leading to Pittsburgh being called colloquially the City of Bridges. In fact, even though we've been destroying them over the past few years at quite a rate, to date I think there's only one city that's ever had more bridges than Pittsburgh, and that's Venice, Italy, with all the canals. But our story today isn't actually about any of those bridges, but rather a specific bridge that hasn't been standing since 1970, and the intricate displays found upon that bridge and their meanings. For this episode, we're talking about the Manchester Bridge portals. As I previously mentioned, crossing the rivers in Pittsburgh is one of the more important yet more difficult things to do. Famously, George Washington found that out personally when in 1753 he attempted to cross the Allegheny River by a wooden raft and it overturned, nearly killing the future president. The site today, ironically enough, is marked by a bridge, the 40th Street or Washington Crossing Bridge. Somebody was laughing about that. As the industrial age reached Pittsburgh and the city began to grow into the industrial juggernaut that it would soon become, crossing the rivers quickly and efficiently became item number 1 on the city's to-do list. It was soon determined that the quickest way to link all 3 parts of the city, the north side, formerly before 1907 known as Allegheny, PA, the south side, and downtown, were 2 bridges that would intersect the downtown region at the confluence of the rivers, the point, and back to their respective sides of the city. In 1874, the Allegheny River was successfully crossed with the Union Bridge, and in 1877, the span from the south side to downtown, the Point Bridge, was completed and later replaced in 1927. The Union Bridge had a slew of problems, though. First, it was constructed out of wood, as the quality of iron, even in a city becoming world-renowned for its production of said material, was circumspect. But probably the biggest issue was that the bridge only had a 40-foot clearance above the water level. This became such a problem that in 1902, the sitting Secretary of War, Mr. Root, ordered the Union Bridge to be raised to accommodate river traffic. The order, which the owner steadfastly refused, became moot when the flood of 1907 flooded the bridge, damaging it heavily. The Union Bridge was torn down later that year, and a new bridge was commissioned. The new bridge, it was decided, would be bigger, a much larger 70-foot clearance this time, and constructed out of steel right across town. The design was settled upon in 1911, and by 1913, construction had begun on the new Manchester Bridge. The bridge officially opened to foot and motor traffic on August 8, 1915, and it linked the north side of Pittsburgh to downtown once more. Yet as they crossed, both pedestrians and motorists observed something new and unique about this bridge. The bridge portals had beautiful and detailed reliefs erected upon them. During the planning phase of the Manchester Bridge, the newly formed Art Commission of Pittsburgh was tasked with beautifying this bridge to add aesthetic appeal. To that end, the commission created a search for an artist and found New York artist Charles Keck, who came up with a unique design for the portals, bas-reliefs made of bronze depicting the seal of the city, and 4 figures that played a role in the city's history and development. The Art Commission approved Keck's idea, and in 1917 the reliefs were added to the portals of the bridge. So who were the 4 figures that Keck chose, and why? Keck wanted to display the history of the city along with its current status as an industrial powerhouse. To that end, he selected 4 figures, each of whom will represent the rest of the stories in this mini-series here. These 4 figures would represent the past present of the city. For the northern portal, Keck chose to represent the history of the region, and on the left side of the relief depicted British scout Christopher Gist, who led George Washington to Fort Duquesne and saved his life in the aforementioned river crossing incident. On the right, he showed Iroquois leader Keosauda, who was instrumental in the Pontiac Rebellion. In fact, early on, some historians called it the Pontiac-Keosauda Rebellion. Regardless, he also led Washington to the fort, but later supported the French during the French and Indian War. On the downtown portal, though, Keck decided to show Pittsburgh's present. On the left side of the portal, he showed a folk-tale steelworker, Joe Magarac, a hero to the blue-collar steel workers and a mythical sort of figure, a fascinating story in his own right. On the right side, he depicted Jan Volkanik, a figure meant to represent both the hard-working coal miners of that region and also the real-life coal miner John Barkowski, who was beaten to death by the coal and iron police. All 4 of these figures we will talk about in later episodes. From the beginning, though, the Manchester Bridge was doomed. As early as 1933, the height of the Great Depression, city officials were looking for ways to beautify the city. Pittsburgh was already well notorious as the hell with the hatches off, and its reputation for being a dirty, soot-covered town was problematic for city officials trying to sell the city to investors. As such, city officials began to champion a new plan, a revitalization of the point, complete with a park, hopefully managed by the National Park Service. In addition, they wanted to create more effective traffic patterns to get from the north side to the south through downtown. The Manchester and Point bridges created a traffic snarl at the point, and if the point was ever to be completed, the bridges would have to move. While the Point Bridge could have potentially been moved, it was determined that the Manchester Bridge could not. This fact ultimately doomed the bridge as a long-term option for the city. With the onset of the 1950s, Pittsburgh began in earnest what we now know today as Renaissance I. The revitalization of the downtown region was one of the most important elements of the Renaissance, with the creation of Gateway Center and the establishment of Point State Park. It had been determined that the National Park Service could not take control of the park, so the Commonwealth did instead. Coupled with the fact that both the Point and the Manchester bridges had reached the end of their lives, plans had started to be made to replace them. The Point Bridge was closed to all traffic in 1959 and later demolished in 1968 to make way for the Fort Pitt Bridge. The Manchester Bridge was, with the bas-relief portals showing significant wear by now, was closed to all traffic in 1969 and was demolished on October 28, 1970 to allow for the spanning of the new Fort Duquesne Bridge. The story of the Manchester Bridge, though, is one of life after death. The portals were removed from the bridge and saved by the Rooney family, the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and were displayed at the old Northside Post Office, what is today the Children's Museum. Late last year, the Rooney family and the Manchester Historical Society unveiled the newly refurbished northern portal on the North Shore next to Heinz Field as a cultural reminder of the city's past. The southern portal still resides at the Children's Museum. As for the bridge footing, that part that holds the bridge on the river's edge, it was left intact, but abandoned on the North Shore as well. It too, though, has been reimagined and today serves as a backdrop for a statue honoring Pittsburgh's own Fred Rogers. Like I said, this is one of 5 shows about the Manchester Bridge, specifically the portals and who adorns them and how they too factor into the story of the Commonwealth.